Imagine standing at the starting line of an ancient stadium, not in modern running shoes, not even in light athletic clothing, but carrying the equipment of a Greek infantryman. A bronze helmet presses down on your head. A heavy round shield hangs from one arm. In the earliest version, greaves protect your legs, adding still more weight and restriction. Ahead of you is not a marathon distance, but a brutal sprint. The event was called the hoplitodromos, often translated as the race of the hoplites. It was one of the strangest and most revealing contests in the ancient Greek games, because it sat directly between sport and war. It was not just about who could run fast. It tested whether a man could move quickly while burdened with the tools of battle. The hoplitodromos entered the Olympic Games in 520 BC, during the 65th Olympiad. That made it the last foot race added to the Olympic program, after the more familiar running events had already become established. Ancient Greek athletics often celebrated the naked body, and most foot races were run without clothing or equipment. The hoplitodromos broke that pattern. It deliberately placed armor back onto the athlete. This mattered because the Olympics were not only entertainment. They were a gathering point for Greek identity, competition, honor, and military values. By adding an armored sprint, the Games acknowledged something every Greek city-state understood: speed on the battlefield could be as decisive as strength, discipline, or courage. The name itself tells us what the race was about. A hoplite was a heavily armed Greek foot soldier, usually fighting in close formation with other citizens. The word hoplitodromos combines the idea of the hoplite with running. The equipment used in the race was called hopla, and it included the helmet, greaves, and especially the shield, known as the aspes. This shield was not a small accessory. It was central to hoplite warfare, built to protect both the soldier and, in formation, the man beside him. In the race, however, the shield became a problem. It threw off balance, occupied the arm, and made every movement more awkward. The athlete was effectively asked to sprint while carrying a piece of battlefield identity. The weight was significant. The armor and shield together added at least 6 kilograms, or around 12 pounds, and much of that weight was not conveniently distributed. A runner can tolerate weight differently depending on where it sits. A shield in the offhand pulls the body sideways. A helmet traps heat and limits comfort. Greaves, when they were still used, made leg motion less natural. Because the race was relatively short, this was not mainly an endurance test in the modern long-distance sense. It was a test of explosive power. The athlete had to accelerate, maintain speed, and control the body under uneven load. It rewarded muscular strength, coordination, and the ability to stay composed under physical stress. Over time, the equipment changed. After around 450 BC, the greaves were abandoned in the Olympic version of the race. That made the event less restrictive for the legs, but it did not make it easy. The helmet and shield remained, and those were enough to preserve the essential character of the contest. This change also shows that ancient athletic events were not frozen in place. They could evolve. The Greeks adjusted rules and equipment, balancing tradition, practicality, and spectacle. Removing greaves may have made the race faster and safer, while still keeping its martial symbolism intact. The athlete still looked like a hoplite, still carried the burden of war, and still had to run in a way ordinary runners did not. At Olympia and Athens, the race was about 2 stades, roughly 350 to 400 meters. That placed it close to what modern viewers might imagine as a long sprint. But the ancient track added a complication. The runners did not simply move in a straight line from start to finish. Like the dialos, the hoplitodromos involved a lap of the stadium, which meant turning sharply at the end. At each end stood a turning post called a campter. In a normal race, a tight turn is already a technical challenge. In the hoplitodromos, the runner had to make that turn while carrying a shield on one side. The event demanded not only speed, but balance, timing, and controlled aggression. That turning point is easy to overlook, but it may have been one of the race's most demanding moments. Sprinting straight ahead in armor is difficult enough. Turning at speed while holding a shield creates a risk of losing rhythm, colliding, drifting wide, or slowing too much. The camptor helped guide the athletes, but it could not solve the physics of the movement. A good runner had to approach the turn with judgment, rotate the body without losing the shield, and re-accelerate immediately. In a short race, a bad turn could decide everything. This made the hoplitodromos more than a raw power contest. It was a technical athletic event shaped by the realities of carrying military gear. The distances were not identical everywhere. At Nemea, another major Pan-Hellenic Games site, the hoplitodromos was doubled to 4 stades, roughly 700 to 800 meters. That changed the nature of the challenge. A short armored sprint emphasizes explosive strength, but doubling the distance forces the athlete to manage fatigue while still carrying awkward equipment. At Plataea in Boeotia, the race reportedly reached 15 stades in total, making it far more demanding. These variations remind us that ancient Greek sport was not always standardized in the modern sense. Local traditions mattered. Different communities could emphasize different aspects of the same idea: speed in armor, military readiness, public spectacle, and the disciplined body of the citizen soldier. To understand why this race may have mattered so much, we need to look beyond the stadium and toward the battlefield. The hoplitodromos appeared shortly before the Greeks faced the full pressure of Persian military power. Persian armies were famous in part for their archers. Against arrows, a slow advance across open ground was dangerous. The longer a soldier remained exposed, the more time the enemy had to shoot. For heavily armed Greek infantry, one solution was the rapid rush, closing the distance quickly so that missile fire had less time to do damage. The hoplitodromos trained exactly that kind of movement. It asked men to run fast under armor, not as fantasy, but as a practical battlefield skill. The original Olympic distance is especially interesting in this military context. A race of about 350 to 400 meters roughly matches the kind of exposed zone where archers could be deadly. That does not prove every detail of the event was designed as battlefield simulation, but the connection is hard to ignore. The athlete's task resembled the soldier's problem: move quickly through danger while carrying defensive gear. The shield protected him, but slowed him. The helmet marked him as armored, but made exertion harsher. Victory required turning the burden into controlled motion. In that sense, the hoplitodromos was a public demonstration of what Greek hoplite culture admired: disciplined strength under pressure. The event also reveals how ancient Greece connected citizenship, masculinity, war, and athletic glory. The same society that celebrated elegant naked running also honored the ability to perform while militarized. The hoplitodromos did not hide the link between the athlete and the soldier. It made that link visible to everyone in the stadium. Spectators watched bodies trained for competition, but they also saw bodies imagined as useful in war. The race turned military preparedness into ritualized spectacle. It was safer than battle, governed by rules, and rewarded with athletic honor, yet it echoed the fear and urgency of combat. That is why it feels so different from many modern Olympic events. The hoplitodromos survives in history because it captures a world where sport was never just sport. It was training, symbolism, civic pride, and preparation for violence, all compressed into a single armored sprint. A runner in this event had to be fast, but also strong enough to carry the shield, coordinated enough to turn around the camptor, and tough enough to endure the heat and imbalance of equipment. Whether at Olympia, Athens, Nemea, or Plataea, the race expressed a simple idea with harsh clarity: in war, movement could mean survival. The hoplitodromos was the ancient Greek answer to that reality, a race where the finish line was athletic glory, but the logic came from the battlefield. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.